Hey everyone, this is Ben Atkinson from LinkedIn, and this is our interview series, Inspiring Leadership and Challenging Times. If you're watching, please like, share, comment, ask questions. We'd love you to get involved. And as always, with me is my friend, Jonathan Bowman-Perks, leadership expert and international coach. Who have we got to interview this week, Jonathan?
Thanks, Ben. And we're on episode 6. So welcome to my favourite time of the week. And we have Mark Hodgkinson, the CEO of the charity Scope. Mark and I worked out that we've known each other for over 10 years when we first started working together as executive and coach. And Mark's had a fascinating time, a whole variety of different jobs: CEO Virgin Money, SVP at EMI, a digital director at Asda, marketing director at HMV, worked with a whole group of the top private equity firms on leadership, been CEO of garden centres, care homes and restaurants. So he's really had a whole cross-section, which in these unprecedented times, Mark, makes you very suitable to have a conversation, and particularly about the impact on the charity sector. Mark, welcome. Good to have you on board.
Thank you.
Now, let's go straight into dealing with a crisis, Mark. You know, we've got this pandemic, which is really hitting all those kind of corporations that you've worked in, who've had good times and bad times. You've had to close chunks of businesses down. You've dealt with all the kind of organizations that are being hit hardest at the moment. But what's your general advice about dealing with a crisis like a global pandemic of this scale? What's been your experience and how are you handling it as a CEO of a charity right now?
Yeah, so clearly, like all of us, I've never actually faced a global pandemic before, so somewhat of a new challenge, despite experiences of other challenges before. But I think my approach has very much been to get started and keep moving. I think it's very easy in a crisis to become a little bit, sort of paralysed and afraid to make the wrong steps, and so I think the pace is important. You won't get everything right. We certainly are not expecting to get everything right, but what we've been trying to do as a team, and what I've been trying to do with my leadership team in the current crisis, is take the necessary steps we need to take as quickly as possible, and hopefully most of those will work, and those that don't, pick yourself up and try again, really, and keep going.
And that brings me to an early experience today when I was coaching a CEO in utilities company. And he said, we talked about the incomplete leader leading the complete team, that this concept that Ben and I have talked about before, where you as the CEO, you accept that you're not perfect, but you need to get moving. You need to get this momentum, or what we call tempo when we're in the military, where you can move fast in one direction and then change direction without losing momentum, because things change. As Churchill once said when he was criticized for changing his mind, he said, when the situation changes, I change my opinion. What do you do? And like, you've got to adapt to it because it's moving at such a pace. And in the military, we talk about the OODA loop: observe, orientate, decide, act, and then observe again, and then orientate yourself, and then decide, and then act. And you've got to get inside that one when the virus is moving quicker than you are, some of the government changes and the rules and things like that, or the economy's moving, or the charity sector's under attack. And he was saying that as leader, to say, look, we're going to be moving at pace. We've got to make decisions. We can't stay still. It's almost like a shark. When you're not moving forward, you will stop and drown. So you've got to keep moving. We're going to make some mistakes. That's accepted. If you do it with the best intentions, if you do it with lacking intentions and integrity, that's not acceptable. But best intentions, have a go. And if we make a mistake and we have to adjust, let's learn from it and move quicker. What's your thoughts, building on what I've just said about your points?
I completely agree. I think I talk about course correction. So you mentioned it there. You go, you plot a path, and you take some first steps. But this crisis keeps throwing new challenges at all of us, and I think the government, in particular, response to the crisis keeps evolving over time. So it's really important that you don't just keep ploughing down one direction. You are I guess, flexible enough and maybe brave enough to recognise that you might need to course correct along the way. So that's definitely being required as part of this crisis, where things can change on a daily basis.
Yeah, and you're the CEO of Scope, which is a charity. You want to just tell the listeners who don't know Scope well a bit about what Scope does and how you've had to completely readjust your operating model in light of day-by-day crisis changes because of the pandemic?
Yeah, so Scope is a pan-disability charity. We seek to support the 14 million disabled people that are in the UK. Our strategy is very much about everyday equality. So we seek to ensure that any of the inequalities that exist for a disabled person in their life, we seek to support them and help them in correcting. That can often be around employment, but in just basic day-to-day things like, in this pandemic, access to food. It's been one of the most common calls, actually, we've had during this crisis. So we very much seek to back disabled people. Obviously, one of the most vulnerable sectors at this time in the crisis, often facing into self-isolation, some are often having to shield. So it's a time where we've never been busier, really. It's a sort of perfect storm, because our income fell by 60%.
Wow!
At the time the crisis kicked in, we had to close all our shops. We had to pull people from street fundraising. We had to cancel all our events, and at the same time, the demand for our services just took off.
Yeah.
And
how quickly did that develop?
Well, within days.
Really?
So I'm literally, I think between probably about, I think on around the 17th of March, we moved all of our operations to operate from home. Thankfully, we had a contact centre and digital environment which enabled us to move our operations from home. We'd never fully done that before, so that was a bit of an act of faith, which thankfully for the people we seek to serve worked well. And those services continue to run from home. But then a few days later, we had to close all our shops. So within a week, we were operating from home, dealing with increased demand, and 60% of our income had disappeared pretty much overnight.
And that is just such a huge change for you and the staff and your other leaders to cope with. A lot of people in the good times before this pandemic, they got to do the risk register and let's go through it. And it was a bit of a sort of going through the ticket for the governance. But do you reckon that in the different organisations you've been in, and you've been in a whole variety of cross-section organisations, as someone who's had to go and fix problems, do you think people plan ahead enough about risk and emergency planning and what to do if things don't work out? Ben quoted, how in the last call about how people, they all think they're going to be brilliant leaders, yet very few of them have done any emergency planning and really thought about what they do when it all goes wrong. Looking back honestly, had you anticipated this kind of thing?
Certainly not anticipated a global pandemic. I think in the current situation, we were pretty well placed because we already operated in a very flexible environment. Everyone had hot desking. We worked from home as well as from the office. We embraced partnership working with others, and we'd invested in technology to enable us to engage with as many people, many of the 14 million people I talked about earlier across the UK. So a lot of those things inherently enabled us to move more quickly in this crisis. But I think, often in organisations, business continuity planning, updating your risk register take maybe second order. And also, I think they tend to be quite backward looking in their nature, which is part of the challenge. I think you can have a brilliant risk register which assess the risks you may have had to face in the past, but I think for me a lot of this is more about your ability to be agile as an organization, to be flexible, to when I was at Virgin in our early days, we started producing 5-year, 10-year plans, and this was in the phase when digital was just taking off, and we very soon realised that there was not really very much value in producing a 5 or a 10-year plan in our case. So we shortened it to 3-year plans, and then we realised that actually things were moving at a much faster pace than that. So we became an organisation that very much worked on the basis of testing and learning, championing things, and then challenging what we were doing. Because I think sometimes when you're at the top, what you think is the top of your game, that is the time to be most challenging of where you're at and what's going to come next. And I think organisations will just need to have much greater agility in the future.
So what? That's fascinating, Mark. So what of the sort of McKinseys of the world who try and convince everybody to have a 3-year plan and all this kind of stuff, and go from being centralised to decentralised and decentralised to centralised? What is the window that people can plan over? It's certainly less than 12 months, isn't it?
Well, my view is that I think there's certain things that you might want to plan in detail, obviously in shorter time frames. And then I think maybe, certainly in my case, I think much more focus around the goals that you want to achieve over a longer period of time, because the route to achieve those goals is almost certainly going to change. I mean, I'm been around for a relatively long period of time now, but just in the last 10 years, pace of change has just gone up exponentially. I think technology,
it's never going to be as slow as this, is what they say. It's never going to again be as slow as this.
So I think trying to those old premises of long-term planning, sticking to your plan, for me, I think those days are gone. I think you have to be much more flexible, but having some really clear goals that you want to achieve and not losing sight of those is important.
That's very good. And Ben and I were talking the other day about Simon Sinek's book, with the finite and the infinite game, and that you're playing the infinite game. You're thinking long-term with a long-term goal to help 14 million people with disabilities, pan-organisation. And that kind of goal with an end state of what you want to do and how you greater equality for people is regardless of the time frame you're in. You know where you're aiming for, and it's a journey. It's never probably a destination. It's just continual journey. So I think people having a clear burning why they're doing what they're doing and be on purpose rather than off purpose. When something like this comes cracking in the military used to say, what's the end state? What's our mission? What are we trying to achieve? And surprises will happen to you all the time. No plan survives the first meeting with the enemy, or in this case, no plan survives the first meeting with a pandemic. And you have to completely adjust and do things differently. Hey, look, that's great. Let's just move on to the next phase, which is you've worked with a whole variety of different people, from Guy Hands to CEOs of Asda and HMV, and you've been CEO yourself. What about inspiring leaders in a crisis? Who would perhaps give me a couple of people that you've worked with who stay super cool and level-headed in a crisis and inspire other people when they're all running around like their pants are on fire?
Yeah, so I guess one of the more obvious ones for me, because I did run Virgin Money, is Sir Richard Branson. He was a great inspiration to me when I came into Virgin to lead Virgin Money. I think from him I learned a lot about being the humility of being a leader, but also I think about how to think about customers, and to always remember that you yourself are a customer sample of one. So it's very easy when you're at the top of an organisation to think that you are the authority on leadership and what your customers want. And I think he was very good at really demonstrating to us and doing it in his acts as well about how to be in touch with customers. We were encouraged to travel in the same way our customers did, read the same things our customers did. Not to have an advantaged position in a remote boardroom as an organisation. So I learned a lot from him, and I thought the Virgin train crash example was a good one of a crisis where I think he handled that really well, actually, in terms of how he approached that. I think I've been more recently. I've been in the charity sector, and I've seen how others, maybe Oxfam, say, have handled the crisis, and it's very easy to try and protect your own interests, I think, in a crisis, and that's almost certainly going to catch you out.
It does come across as a really empathetic leader, and that's probably quite difficult to achieve for a lot of people, especially sort of in these sort of tough times. How do people sort of balance those tough decisions with being an empathetic leader?
Yeah, I think if you're certainly for me, I think one of the things I've learned is around that you need to be really open and honest, and not be governed by self-interest in those situations. And I think people, if you do that and you do that sincerely, then people recognise that, and therefore you are able to ask people to make tough decisions. I've asked most of my team to volunteer to cut their salaries by 20%, so everyone's on 80% of the. Everyone who's not frontline service is on 80% of their previous salary, unless they've been furloughed, and they had to agree to that, and they ultimately volunteered to do that because they see that as an important thing to do at this time of crisis. So I think if you reach out,
that's very key point. We were talking about this before, where a CEO was speaking to all his staff about how they need to have these cutbacks and things like that. And he said, "I must dash now. I've got to get onto my helicopter to fly back to London." And that just went down so incredibly badly. What is, without mentioning names, because lots of the guilty parties, what about some really toxic leaders? What should people watch out for with really bad leadership in a crisis, when the leaders get quite selfish? You must have worked for some dodgy ones as well as some good ones. What have you seen bad in a crisis?
Yeah, I think it's when people, the leaders, I guess, I least like, and I think are least effective, are those that become obsessed with themselves. I think it's very easy as a leader, as a CEO, for everyone to say what they think you want to hear, to treat you as the most special person in the organisation. And I think that sort of heady cocktail can be quite corrupting, really. So for me, those leaders that are, frankly, it's all about themselves, it's all about what's in it for them, are the ones that I have found most toxic and least effective. Yeah.
Well, before I hand over to Ben for some quick fire questions and to check on where things are, let's just finally talk about inspiring teams that you've been in who've handled a crisis well. What advice would you share from what you've seen of teams who've worked well together in a crisis that people listening could take away and check against their own teams and how they're doing or what they could do differently? What have you seen?
Yeah, I think I've been fortunate enough to work with a number of really great teams over the years, and I think the thing that delivers a strong team for me is first of all that I think you generally are interested in the people that you are working with and want to support them and reach out to them. It's not all about what's in it for you. And I think I think the other great thing about really successful teams is they're not focused on internal issues. It is very easy in a crisis, in particular, to become completely distracted by the issues you're facing yourself. Moving to a new location, having your pay cut, whatever it might be. But the really great teams I've seen really focus on who they're there to serve and who their customer is, or who they're seeking to support, and that is a binding force for great teams working together, I think.
Yeah, that's excellent. So Ben, over to you.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, no, I completely agree with all of that. Just that sort of honesty and also that ability to actually ask for help as a leader, to ask the people around you to say, look, we're going to get through this together, but we've got to do it together. Like you're asking for that 20% of wages, but yeah, I'm sure it'll pay off with bringing the team together and surviving this crisis. So yeah, for this part of the interview, firstly, if anyone is watching, it's great if you could just like, share, comment, ask any questions. We'd love to hear from you. While we're waiting on that, we like to sort of ask the people we interview about their successful habits, so the things that have made them successful through their career. So, and we use the adage of being healthy, wealthy, and wise. So, if you're ready, we're just going to ask some quick fire questions and just sort of see some of the things that you sort of live your sort of life by. Okay, so just first up on healthy side. So just sort of looking at your career, you've been in lots of quite high pressure, high impact positions. How do you mentally and physically stay healthy?
I think for me, the most important thing is sleep. So I think as leaders, we can get seduced by needing to be available all the time. Working every hour of the day, and actually my experience is probably the more hours I work, the less effective I become. So I remember when I first worked with Virgin Money, and this dates me, but the BlackBerry was all the thing, and I used to leave my BlackBerry on at night, and we were opening in Australia at the time. And I would get emails pinging to me through the night, and I soon realised actually I needed to switch the thing off and have some proper sleep. So I'm a big fan of sleep.
Yeah. The general we interviewed last week also said sleep is like a superpower. You need to be able to get it and get some really sort of time away. And one of the things he said was it's really important to actually sort of empower the people around you so you can actually take that break. So I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Absolutely. I think, I find that if I have a break, then some of the problems that I was facing before that break that seemed insurmountable suddenly become much easier to solve. So I think it's very, again, I think there's a lot in today's culture that is about the macho style of not taking a holiday, not taking a break. And, I find, frankly, if you go away on holiday and you have a proper break, your insight and views on what you should do in your organisation are far greater at the end of that holiday than maybe they were at the start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I sometimes find that I sort of look over a few problems before I go to bed, and by the time the morning comes, you sort of like got a little bit more of a handle on stuff. Okay, second question. So obviously everyone's right now probably looking at money and savings and how they sort of survive through the crisis. So is there any piece of advice or the best advice you've ever had around money or advice you give people about?
You're asking money. Mr. Virgin Money? Yes,
exactly, yeah.
So the advice I give my kids is do what makes you happy, which might sound a bit trite, but I think if you're good at something and you're happy in what you're doing, you will find a way of being successful, and hopefully that will be rewarding, and often, in my experience, it leads to wealth as well. I think people that start with the objective of wealth can often end up being quite miserable. And certainly, again, when I first met Richard Branson, one of the things he said is focus on your customers and the profits will look after themselves. And I think focus on your happiness, focus on what you're good at, and hopefully wealth in whatever form it takes will look after itself.
Yeah, right. You can really sort of attack anything you're doing with more vigor if you actually care about it, actually interested or love it.
Yeah, absolutely. My philosophy is you spend probably more time at work than anything else other than sleeping that you do. So you've got to enjoy what you're doing, and I think seek to change that if that isn't the case.
Yeah, absolutely. So, final part of this section is wisdom. So, is there a piece of wisdom that you sort of live your life by, or an adage you use to live your life by or strive for?
Yeah, there is, and I mentioned it earlier actually, but I always remember that I'm a customer sample of one. I've been privileged to lead a number of really customer-focused organisations. And I think when you sit in a boardroom with a team of people, it's very easy to assume that everyone is like you, and the products and services you're trying to develop are for people like you. And I think that's when things start to go wrong. And also, you lose sight of why you're there, what your purpose is for. The purpose is not to keep you in that boardroom; it's to really fulfil the needs of the customers that you're working for, and success will hopefully flow from that.
Yeah. And do you because there's a lot of concentration of a lot of companies looking at shareholder value and creating profits and creating revenue. Do you think they've got it the wrong way around?
Well, I think in the commercial sector, shareholder value does at least drive certain behaviours in terms of hopefully some efficiencies and effectiveness. What struck me actually in the charity sector, which is the sector I've now joined, is that we're quite driven by top line income. So, charity league tables are set based on how much income you have in the top line, and you're considered to be more important and a successful charity the bigger your top line income. But when you look at that really is not a very good surrogate for impact and the difference. Some of the people that have had most impact in terms of social change have been a single person. You can think of many situations like that in our current world. So I think charities are working on an outmoded concept of what success looks like. And certainly it's one of the things I'm seeking to change in the sector at the moment.
Yeah, and that was coming up recently about, is GDP the measure that we should be looking at, or should we be looking at people's health and well-being and their general their personal happiness, which is another interesting one. Ben, any more from you before we go on to part two?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. Just something I'm really interested in because of your experience in marketing and in your sort of past roles with this type of crisis going on, because I deal with marketing teams a lot, and they're really, a lot of them are quite lost of how they approach the market, how they represent their brands in the right way, in the right tone. Have you got any advice on that?
Yeah, I think I can see the challenge of that. I mean, frankly, I think it's one we're all wrestling with at the moment. So. In my case, in this crisis in the charity sector, I think people genuinely do want to reach out and help, but I think, frankly, there are so many causes and ways that you can help that I think you have to do that in a considered way. I think where it works well for me is where people, I touched on it earlier, but where people want to volunteer, where they want to really come to you, and you've only got to look at the NHS. Their marketing campaign said, "Come and help us at this time." 750,000 people, I think, subscribed to that. I think the issue then you have is your ability to execute, because I also was reading today that many of those 750,000 are now signing off the app because they haven't been asked to provide any help. So I think for me, if you can reach out, touch people at this time with a view to wanting to support your cause, whatever it might be, but then obviously have the ability to follow through on the demand that might create, that would be my tip for what it's worth.
Yeah. Final question. So obviously this is something we spoke about before we went live, but necessity being the mother of invention. How is this creating sort of innovation within scope, and how do you think it's going to change the way you sort of go to market or create revenue for the charity into the future?
Yeah, no, I've seen so many times when necessity has driven innovation, actually, and I think it's one great thing about working in organisations that need to change is, when I mentioned earlier, when you're at the top of your game, you can sit there maybe feeling a bit complacent about how good you are, rather than really challenging yourself on what you need to do next. Whereas when you're in a crisis, you sort of have to move and you have to start innovating. So for me, I think the ability to reach people through digital channels has been really fantastic at this time. In my own internal organisation, I speak to people every week in the organisation, whether they're furloughed or not, about what we're doing as an organisation. But we are able to reach out and talk to potentially 14 million disabled people in the UK. So I think the use of digital will only, I think, increase. And I think the attitude to workplaces and how you do work will change, because we've all, in many cases, got used to work in an office, and if you're not in an office very often, then does that mean you're not working? I think the pace of work on Zooms and Skypes has just been phenomenal.
It's been crazy. Yeah,
break in. It's not. There's no strolling over and getting a coffee in the office. It's break time to survive. But I do think the ability to rapidly get groups of people together to solve a problem very quickly has been a really good part, if there is such a thing, of this crisis. Getting teams to mobilise, make quick decisions, form in different ways in a less hierarchical, less traditional, structured way has been really, really good part of this crisis. And it's something that there are many innovations, I think, that we all need to hold on to when we come out of this crisis. And I've certainly been, every time I've seen something that I think has been working really well, I've been noting it down. So I have quite a long list of things that I think we just need to ensure that we embrace as we come out, just lapse back into the old way of working.
Yeah, if you can share that list, that'd be great. Because I haven't been noting things down. I've got to start noting things down on that front.
Right, so let's move into part two, Mark, and talk about all those different jobs that you've done, and your life as you've been growing up. Who, as you were growing up and before you worked into business, who's really influenced you, whether it be teachers or parents or whatever, and what were their values about inspiring leadership?
Yeah, I was quite strongly influenced in my early career by people having a perception that I couldn't do something. So when I was fortunate enough, I think from a geography perspective, to be at a school where I could go to a grammar school in my secondary education. And I was flatly told by my teacher that there's no way I would get to grammar school. So I was extremely motivated to pass my 11 plus and get there. And then I got to grammar school and was flatly told there was no way I would go to Cambridge University because people from this school don't get to Cambridge University. So set your sights at an appropriately lower level. And I was determined to do that too. So I think sometimes people, as a parent, you have to be careful of that. You sort of can set boundaries with your kids, you can set boundaries with your teams, and not allow yourself to be ambitious enough about what could be achieved as an individual. So I think I've taken that into my later life, not to put caps on people's potential. Assume that they won't be able to achieve things.
Yeah, and that's really helpful. And just thinking about, there you are, you've gone on, you've achieved a lot in your life. What about, in the different challenges you had at different roles? Can you think of a particular story or two when you faced a real challenging situation of a turnaround or something really uphill that you had to turn around and what you learned from it?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's right to say I've been privileged to face lots of challenges and turnarounds, but I've had to do a number. I mean, there are some where there's nothing been quite, I think, as challenging as this current crisis, certainly in my lifetime. But I think there are, when I was, for example, at Asda, I came into Asda when home shopping was just, it was still pretty new. Supermarkets had been opening home shopping environments around the country. If you were a home shopping digital leader at that time, you could do no wrong, because every time you opened a supermarket, more customers flowed through, more business flowed through, your growth was higher than every other part of the business, and you just looked great. When I joined Asda, I sort of didn't get my timing quite right on that, and I think 97% of the country was populated by home shopping centres at the time I joined, and actually growth was starting to tail off, and supermarkets at the time were very keen on online growth because it was frankly the only area where growth was coming from, and we were all chasing new customers. So we were throwing vouchers and incentives at new customers. And I think the purpose of this story is to say, don't always assume that what's staring you in the face is the answer, because I think we all assumed that we needed more new customers, and therefore we were all desperately trying to incentivize new customers. And of course, all that happened is that customers became very savvy and moved from one supermarket to another, depending on what voucher or incentive they received. When you looked into it, actually the people we'd forgotten about were our existing customers. So we looked at our whole database, and we looked at those people who'd shopped with us for a long time, and when they'd started to stop shopping with us. And in some cases that was because they'd moved, but in many cases we found there was a really strong correlation between the service they were getting, in this case short sell-by dates, late deliveries, and their propensity to stay with us as an organisation. And as soon as we highlighted that to the operators who were out there delivering on the vans and worked really hard to improve those two measures, our growth returned to very high levels. So it wasn't about chasing new customers, it was about looking after the existing customers we already had.
That is really fascinating.
Fill a leaky bucket, can you?
Yeah. Because, my daughter works for Ocado, for example, which is having a fascinating growth spurt, particularly the digitization of everything and automation of all their warehouses and things like that. But also I'm thinking it's many of the people in marketing that I know or work with, it's quite a challenging time, because in some ways people can't afford to have 3 different types of watch strap, of the same watch strap, or how many trainers do you need? So it's almost like we're beginning to challenge the very essence of marketing. Why are you overselling to people, commercializing everything? And the way out of this economy is for people to buy lots more stuff. But do they need this stuff? So there's almost an integrity question about the very purpose of marketing, to get people to feel they need stuff and they're not happy unless they have lots more things. But we're realizing now, as we're stuck at home, that actually what matters most is relationships and things like that. How do you, as a leader, how do you reckon that's going to square itself in the future, the new normal? Do you think things will be different? Or just go back to how it was, buying lots of stuff?
I really hope we do take some of the good things that have come out of this crisis forward. I think there's the tendency with human nature to a degree to lapse back to how things were when things returned to how they were. But I do think this has probably gone on long enough. I don't think many of us have ever had a change in our lives that has been so dramatic, that has probably lasted for so long, unless you're facing into some long-term health condition. So I think hopefully some of the changes will be sustainable. But for me, it comes back to remembering who your customer is, because a lot of the behaviours you described are about organisations trying to maintain their status quo, their top lines, rather than really trying to understand what customers really want from them. So, an example I gave before, we'd assumed we just needed to go and get more and more new customers, and we'd just forgotten about looking after our existing customers. And so I think, if you're in tune with what you're being told and you want to seek that insight and act upon that insight, and hopefully that will lead to better quality organisations and great success.
How have you done that in the past, Mark? Been so in tune with your customer, because it's sometimes quite difficult to put yourself in their shoes and really sort of see, because sometimes it's not something that they know they need or want. It's the thing that they don't realise that they need that can be so successful.
Exactly, and I think when I first started in my career, I thought that what I really needed to understand is what I needed customers to tell me what they wanted, and you get some very interesting outcomes if you just take that approach.
A faster horse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Some of the maybe the technology inventions we've seen wouldn't have happened with that approach. I think what tech and digital companies probably have shown us is just, and it's an obvious thing to say now, but it was far less obvious maybe a few years ago, is the importance of data. And I think really embracing all the data and insights and touch points you have as an organisation are important. In the turnarounds that Jonathan mentioned, I've often gone into an organisation, and actually I have it in the current organisation at the moment, and discovered that we've got, in the case of Scope, we've got 27 databases of customer information, and we need to invest the time and energy in bringing that together and bringing that insight together. When I was at Asda, we had databases for home shopping, for online deliveries, for credit cards. All of them were separate. And so when I was at Virgin, every single Virgin company had its own database of customers. But one of the reasons we launched the credit card is because suddenly we could actually get transaction data from customers and really start to learn about how they transacted, what they were interested in, what they wanted to do. So I think being a company that is really curious about its customers and is prepared to, as you say, not just follow what they ask, but try things and then use the sort of data and insight to see what works, I think is a really important thing for us to do.
Yeah. So let's come back to building on other stories in your experience, whether Asda, HMV, EMI, Virgin Money. And I was particularly interested, you had to look after a whole load of care homes. You mentioned when we were discussing in the warm-up session, the green room, that the charity sector's having a very hard time, care homes having a particularly difficult time. What did you learn about your experiences running care homes, and also what do you think is going on for the care homes right now in this country?
Yeah, I have a massive concern for care homes in this country at the moment. I think the nature of a care home is that there is a relatively fixed amount of income that comes into that care home on a regular basis. And obviously, at this time of crisis, the costs have just gone through the roof. So, the cost of PPE, the costs of the staffing model in terms of people having to self-isolate or shielding are just, they really are eye-watering. And I, in my charity role, don't run care homes, but I know a number of my colleagues do, and they can't furlough their staff because they need them on the front line to provide the care, and yet they're having to pay an enormous amount more to ensure that they have PPE when they can get it, and that they are resourcing the care homes adequately to provide the right level of care. And they are just rattling through any reserves they might have with the need to do that. So I do feel for the care sector at the moment. When I was in care homes, it was a better time. Our big focus was on wellbeing. I think it's very easy again when you're in an organisation to focus on sort of like the basics of running the organisation. So ensuring the care is provided, etc. But when you go into a care home, it's the last year. It is the last years of your life, and they should be great. They should be great years wherever possible. So a big part of the focus needs to be on well-being. So we really focused on all the basics of recreation and all the things we should be doing now. Really, activities, eating well, sleeping well, but ensuring that you have a full life and you're not left to sit in a bed and the boxes are ticked to provide the basic level of care that's needed.
I completely understand, and my wife and I care 24 hours a day for her mother, who's with us and not at all well, and I really don't want her to have to go into a care home. We're going to try and hang on to her as long as we can, looking after her, because they're under such strain, the poor old care homes. They're doing a great job, and I've got friends like Jonathan Cunningham, who runs a care home himself and knows how hard it is. Now, we're coming towards the end of our time, and I just wondered what other stories or even top tips you'd share with people about inspiring leadership in challenging time, Mark. You've got a lot of different stories to tell, but what would you pick out as a last couple of stories and tips that you'd share with people?
I think one of the things I would share is seek progress over perfection. Actually, one of the things we haven't touched on is that I was running McDonald's restaurants in the Nordics before and that was a really interesting experience, because I think whatever you think of McDonald's, I think one of the things they're very good at is progress over perfection. So obviously everyone wants to do the best job they can, but sometimes, just as we talked about earlier in the crisis, just getting started, making a move is one of the sort of key top tips, I would say. So for me, progress over perfection is one of the things that I would say. And I think another tip I would give dealing with the crisis is the crisis is obviously a time when you need to respond. But I think probably there may be the tendency to almost like have a sigh of relief at the end of a crisis, say, right, that's now done. For me, that is the time to be most alert and most active, because I think, as we talked earlier, lots of innovation has come out of this crisis, and it would be a real shame just to lose all of that and go back to the way we were before the crisis started. And also, the post-crisis consequence, particularly in the sector I'm in at the moment, the charity sector, is probably going to be just as challenging, if not more challenging, because it lasts for longer, the crisis itself. So I think, really think about how you're going to come out strongly out of a crisis, what innovations you're going to take with you, and make sure you put time and effort into bringing them to life, not just forgetting about them when it's over. And plan to be as strong as possible. I think plan to come out of that crisis as strongly as possible.
There's a lot of people saying that they're sort of going back to what they used to have, like the status quo. but actually you should probably be aiming for something better, or like you say, take a learning from this crisis and innovate and aim for something excellent.
Fall forwards.
100%. I think it's none of us would have wished this to happen at all, and it's a very difficult time to deal with. But if anything good is going to come out of it, I think it's given us all the opportunity to really think about how we live our lives, how we engage with our families, how we work, and we should try and take some of those things forward, I think.
Yeah, the stuff that matters.
Yeah,
definitely some reassessment going on with lots of people's lives.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, Mark, look, thank you so much for coming on to Inspiring Leadership in Challenging Times with Ben Atkinson and myself. And you've got so much to share. And I know people will be looking up for information about your charity Scope. And we've been putting the details on there. Ben's putting them on there. But thank you for what you do for society, you and your colleagues in Scope. And it's great to have you on the show. So thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mark. Is there anything that people are listening that can do at the moment for Scope or charities like yourself?
Yeah, I mean, if they want to go to our website, which I know you've been posting, I've been on, be fantastic. Obviously, we'd love any help people feel they can offer at this time. It's a real crisis for the 40 million disabled people in the UK. So every bit of help is absolutely welcome. So please do visit the website and see how you can help.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Mark.
Thanks.